Old man kind of gets the upper hand on him, and this happened.
Okay, I swear to God.
To me, that's the most memorable moment of the film. Like when I hadn't seen this movie in years, and they're like, "Don't breathe." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that motherfucker," and his lips flapping around like that was crazy. The way they shot this was insane. But Phable, just starting with you again, like what do you think of? It doesn't have to be just that gunshot scene, but just them entering the house, even the camera movement, the way the camera is moving around as they enter the house, like this whole chunk of the film and this moment. What's your thoughts, brother?
I was very impressed by what you said, the camera movements. He moved the camera around the house in such a way where he was covering all three of their movements, but in a sort of continuous shot. It was edited, but it was sort of there, you know what I mean? Where he's trying to, and then he's like showing you all the things that'll come into play later on in the movie. Like he's moving the thing under the bed. You see the gun tucked under the bed. He's moving over here. You see the lock. You see this. When I'm seeing all of this, first of all, I appreciate any director that tries something. You know what I mean? That does something. So that right there, I love. I saw the influence of Sam Raimi, Raimi's Evil Deads and Raimi's Drag Me to Hell. He moves the cameras in certain ways, and you can tell that this is a more sophisticated, more 2000 version. So I was very impressed by this scene. And man, I say this about horror all the time. If you know what you're doing, you can make anything scary.
Right.
A blind man, come on.
Yeah.
And you know what? I believe it. All the old directors, that's what they did. They took something, common things, household items sometimes, and said, "Oh, the drain, go down the drain." You know what I mean? And I feel like this is the 2016. This is a natural evolution of what they were doing in the 80s with just that shine, man, that experience.
Hell yeah, dude. And this is one of the, like, I've listened to a lot of horror podcasts, and I hear so many people say it's very Hitchcockian. It's Hitchcockian. This is that. I'm not going to sit and pretend that I've watched a bunch of Hitchcock movies. I haven't. I've seen like 3 of them, but I get what they're talking about. The way that the camera is moving without words to show you what the people are going to be dealing with in the future. So that's one thing I had Steph and Phable, I talked to you guys that we'd maybe get into is the way that they use foreshadowing in this movie, specifically, and I'm glad you brought it up here, Phable, is in this bit. They're going around, they're showing us all these different things. And it's one, like I've heard people like doing reviews and they've said like, oh, a lot of obvious foreshadowing. And I'm never really sure like what's good foreshadowing and what's bad foreshadowing. When is it too obvious? Because I would say all this foreshadowing was fairly obvious, but I don't know that that is a bad thing. That's what foreshadowing is. You're supposed to see like, oh, there's some kind of threat to the people. Oh, there's a hammer there. They're zooming in on that bitch. Someone's getting whacked later. It just really stood out to me like that there was a lot of it and that it was maybe obvious, but it's like, you know, I'm not going to sit and pretend that I know, like, oh, that was too, I don't know. Like, no, I'm never really sure what's good and what's bad when it comes to that specific, like, foreshadowing.
Sometimes I thought they used it well, like the foreshadowing when Money came in, like, he put the gas in the room and he came out and, like, I guess a little too soon after he shot the lock off. But right before he did, they were talking about the gun. And he's like, of course, I never used this thing before. Seeing Stephen Lang show up right after, I was like, I wonder if he heard, because like you could sense in that standoff between him pretty immediately, Stephen Lang could figure out that guy, he didn't have the heart to pull that trigger and that he was going to test him and push him. So I thought in that way, like, you know, that little bit of foreshadowing, like he hadn't used the gun, he gets put in a situation where, you know, what's he going to do? I thought overall it wasn't a negative to the movie.
Right. Well, I kind of look at it like there's certain movies that you don't want to spend, like you could make the complaint earlier when she goes and she talks to her daughter. It's pretty obvious that they're setting up, okay, now she needs this money to get to California. It's not super well done. That could have been better. But in a movie like this, that's pretty much a popcorn movie. Like, how much time do you want to spend on subtlety? I think you kind of can just fast forward a lot of the subtlety, be on the nose in a movie like this.